Hey, what is going on, crypto people? It is the Crypto Siege with another day in the life and the crazy life that is the digital asset space. Happy Wednesday to each and every one of you, and good afternoon. Yeah, Brad Garlinghouse, a day two at the Aspen Summit. Some very, very interesting stuff. Shout out to Mr. XRP for sharing with the community. I'm going to share some of that with you guys today as well. So listen, the market is doing what the market does, and that is really, really cool. It's doing what it does, right? And so at least we know that's what it is. It's ups and downs, it's ebbs and flows. I hope you guys had a chance to check out DIY investing video that I shared yesterday with you guys. You definitely want to watch that to get a sense of what the market is doing in October, in November, in December, so you can check out the 4-year cycles. What does it look like, and what does it mean for you, right? And so for me, I'm looking at 90 days. I'm looking at 90 days, right? August, September, October, 90 days, maybe sideways, maybe a little up, maybe goes up a little bit, and then it's still sideways. 90 days, August, September, and all of October, maybe just half of October, but in any case, that's what I'm looking at, right? So mentally being able to prepare, maybe even adding to our positions, in the market. Maybe we'll see how that goes. So listen, I know I don't know if the thing is still live or if Brad is done or not, but we're going to share bits and pieces of that with you guys as well. Definitely some very, very, very interesting stuff. I'm waiting for the stream to catch up here a little bit. Let me share this out, let everyone know that the Crypto Siege is live for sure. Get this live streams going. I have to share this out on Twitter real quick. Why is that saying incoming? Let's try this again. So how are you guys doing? Everybody doing good? Hope you guys are doing great. Let's see, our assistant has uploaded the videos and redid them. So I'm wondering how, I got to really check and monitor how that is going. Let's see if the sub count is reflecting the way that it should correctly. Some interesting stuff from one of the ladies there on that panel with Brad that I definitely want to share with you guys. I mean, it was really, really good stuff. Let's put this out on Twitter if you guys don't mind, letting the world out there know on Twitter and Facebook that the Crypto Siege and the family is live. That would be really, really, really awesome. Let's see here. Is that going on? Is that correct? I hope I'm not doing this at the exact same time that he's live over there. Let's see. Is that good? Everything is good there. All right. Yeah, no one is showing up here, so I'm wondering if that is the case, if it's YouTube or what is going on there. So let me share. Let me start by sharing what's going on in the market and see if some people show up, make sure that is correct. All right. So let's see what the market is doing right now, guys. The market is down to, was it 2.9%? Let's see. $1.69 trillion, up 2.2%, 1.669. Okay. Bitcoin's at 39,299. Ethereum is 2,600, so it's under 2,800. $2,672. Binance Coin is at $332. XRP is at 72 cents, almost 73 cents. Interesting. Dogecoin 20 cents. Polkadot's at $18. And Uniswap is at $22. Chainlink's at $24.50. Bitcoin Cash, $543. Solana's $35. Litecoin's $142. Polygon, yay, $1.06 there. So that is very cool. I have not checked on my Convex or my app Polygon, Aave rather, platform in a while. I have to check that out. I haven't been there in a little bit. Yeah, I don't know what's going on here. So hopefully the stream is getting out. Let me share this. What's going on, John? Great to see you. Good to see you, my friend. Let me share this out. I may be going live the same time that Brad is on the panel. Put this out on Twitter. All right, guys. So those are the numbers. I know a lot of people not so excited about what happened yesterday with Gary Gensler. Michael Arrington was he was not excited, right? Yes, indeed, indeed, indeed. What's going on, D. Dan? It's just great to see you, bro. The digital funkster is in the building. It's good to see you as well. Yeah, Michael Arrington, not excited about what's going on over there. Was not excited at all. Okay, let's see. Let's see which one I want. Yeah. So I can get rid of this one. And I can do that. Do this. Let me share something here if I can find it. With Michael Arrington, I think it's important. yeah, there it is there. Okay, let me show this real quick, and then we're going to get into this summit. So I mean, truly, Gary Gensler he just showed his colors of where he is, right? He let us know where he is, and that's important. Now that we can prepare again. I really do believe that to be true. Michael Arrington says, one thing Gensler made clear today, he thinks all of crypto is under his control, and he's eager to expand the power of the SEC. He said the law is clear based on 75 enforcement actions, but seems to be walking back clarity on Ethereum at least. All I see is more muddy waters. And Johnny Deaton, shout out to you, my friend. Arrington heard it this way because that's exactly what was said. Regulation by enforcement will continue. The fact that Gensler claimed that there is clarity in the market says it all. Indeed, it does. It really, really does. That's where we are with Gensler for sure. Let me share the more important things with you guys. And that's some stuff coming from Brad Garlinghouse. And that panel that he's on, it's a very interesting one. Let's see. Let's see.
The rest of our panelists. And one thing I wanted to do, I was hoping Brad and Stuart could kind of do this. Just briefly give us an update on, Brad, I want to call on you first. Briefly give us an update on Ripple and XRP, where it stands. And I know a lot of people want to talk about the case that you have right now winding through the courts with the SEC over Ripple and XRP. So, Brad, can you give us a quick update?
Sure. Thanks, Paul. Nice to see you. And thank you to the broader team for including me. I'm looking forward to this as well. Team Ripple, we've, despite the pandemic and frankly, despite the lawsuit from the SEC, 2021 has been a record year for us. Things continue to grow. For those of you who aren't familiar with Ripple, at the core, we are a technology company selling solutions for cross-border payment, cross-border settlement. In our technology stack, we use a digital asset called XRP. XRP is one of the leading cryptocurrencies out there. And as Paul introduced, the SEC filed suit last December asserting that XRP is a security. The one thing I will say, I don't have too much to say about the case itself. I think yesterday we heard Chair Gensler comment that they brought 75 cases, enforcement actions against various digital assets. If you break that down, 37 of those didn't involve the sale of any digital asset at all. 37 were what we'd call ICOs, initial coin offerings, and oftentimes these were actual frauds. Only one of the 75 involves a digital asset outside of an ICO. And for obvious reasons, I'm not going to talk too much more about that case, other than saying it's definitely an outlier. And I'm sure we'll talk more about some of Gensler's comments during the conversation. So thank you.
Okay, and then Stuart, Diem is a project that was.
All right, so let me get past that. Interesting stuff. 75, obviously the outlier they're talking about is the digital asset XRP, right? So 37 of those didn't even have a coin, a digital asset attached to it. 37 of them out of the 75 didn't even have a digital asset attached to it. 37 were ICOs, and some of those were scams. And only one did not have an ICO out of those 75. The outlier, as he likes to call it. And I really want you guys to pay attention to this lady. She is really, really, really sharp. Let's take a listen.
It brings the greatest benefit to the greatest number of people. So Gal, can you kind of jump in and give us from your perspective what you think are the big issues?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Thank you. And thank you for inviting me. It's great to be back speaking, although I wish in person, but speaking at the Aspen Institute. Look, I think that when we think about these truly transformational technologies, we really need to talk about the major elephant in the room when it comes to our international financial system. I can tell you when I was and this really sort of became much clearer in my mind when I was at the Treasury Department. So when I was at Treasury, it was very much a global and diplomatic job, and I would travel all over the world. And it was increasingly the case that particularly in the developing world and emerging markets, our U.S. banks had pulled out, right? The U.S. banking system, unfortunately, is failing so many of those countries, right? The big elephant in the room that we're not talking about nearly enough is that there are about 1.7 billion people today who are completely shut out of banking. And the national security question for the United States is, are we going to be at the center of that? Are we going to reimagine what the international payment system can look like to bring all of those different people into the ecosystem? Or are we going to enforce our way out of that ecosystem? And I'll tell you why I say are we going to enforce our way out of that system? That's because I believe that the reason our banks have massively gotten out of the developing world and emerging markets is because in 2012, there were lots of decisions that were made to go after banks, U.S. banks, Western banks, with massive enforcement cases in connection with anti-money laundering and sanctions evasion. And the net output of that was two things. One, those banks started to spend a lot more time, effort, and money on sophisticated compliance programs, which is important. But they also then made the business decision to just pull out of the developing world and emerging markets. And when I say that, I'm talking about Africa. I'm talking about parts of the Western Hemisphere, parts of Latin America. And I which is why people were begging me for help to get them access to U.S. correspondent banking. That is where an enforcement-only approach landed us. It landed us in this place where we have huge gaps around the world from a U.S. financial center perspective. Without a doubt, China is taking advantage of that. It's no accident that there are more Alipay users today than all of the major other global fintechs combined. And we have to make a decision, right? The U.S. government really has to make a decision as to whether it wants to be at the center of what I believe we have potentially in crypto, which is transformational technology that can bring many, many more people into that financial ecosystem. And that, from my perspective, is the real national security issue, because if we shove these innovators who are like extraordinarily big brains, right? If we just push them out of the United States, I fear that 3 to 5 years from now, we're going to wake up in a fundamentally different place from a global financial infrastructure perspective, and the U.S. is going to get, in many ways, in many parts of the world, we're really going to get left behind. And that's the threat here. We have to have a much bigger view of what our long-term objectives are and how we're going to achieve them. I could talk about this, like from an illicit finance perspective, by the way, we have to have that technology in the United States. If we push it out, it's going to make it much more difficult to go after the bad actors.
Okay. If I could offer, by the way, I think, to me, by the way, I agree with everything Sigal just said. The one thing I would add is the other elephant in the room, I think, is the lack of clarity that has gone on in this industry. And, you know, for years, I think the crypto industry has asked for that clarity. And yet, you know, we're still getting this kind of, hey, I mean, yesterday we heard it is clear, you know, yet a few weeks ago, we had two commissioners and Pierce and Roisman saying, you know, a letter, and I'll quote, you know, they said a decided lack of clarity for market participants around the application of the securities laws of digital assets and their trading. So to me, one of the elephants in the room is we can't keep saying it is clear and then trying to make it clear through enforcement. You see other G20 markets like the UK, like Japan, like Switzerland, like Singapore, who have been proactive and engaged, and that has helped these markets thrive in those countries. If the US wants to be a leader in this space, then we need to provide that clarity and not, you know, act like there is clarity.
Yeah.
I agree with that, and I agree with what Sigal and Brad have said. I do think, though, that there's we don't necessarily have to jump to the saying that, you know, well, we don't want an enforcement only regime. I agree with that, but when we say we want clarity, I think that the U.S. government has the ability to say, here's the clarity, and set high standards. And set high standards around these issues. I think that, as Sigal said, this is a very innovative space. A lot of, as she puts it, big brains, no doubt. I won't count myself among them, but I know that there are lots of big brains in this space. If the United States sets high standards, the industry will be happy to meet them, right? And the clarity is what is desired. And in setting high standards, I don't think we need to choose between getting the innovation and getting the integrity of the system. We can have both. We can have this innovation and get the benefit of it and bring the unbanked in and make remittances affordable and have integrity in the system. This technology allows us to do that, but I think that the United States, in order to do that, we still have the biggest voice in this globally. If the United States sets those high standards, the industry will react to them. They will provide it, and frankly, the world will come along. There are areas where I think we really need to set those high standards and insist on the integrity of the system throughout the world, which I think we have the ability to do.
Let's talk about one of those elephants in the Zoom. See what I did there?
That's good.
I thought of it. I thought it was clever. I couldn't help myself. I know it's not, but
Nicely done.
thank you. Thanks for patronizing me. Anyhow, let's talk about China. China is in the early stages of launching a digital version of their currency, a digital renminbi. And it's interesting. We're at a place where the U.S. Congress is talking about what bills to introduce, what bills to pass, how to get laws around this. Regulators are talking about, we're going to do this by enforcement, and the industry is saying, give us some clarity. And China has a digital currency that it is launching as we speak. So, give me the compare and contrast between these two superpowers and their monetary.
Yeah. So look, when you talk about China, you have to recognize, right, that they also have just extremely sophisticated engineers who are working on these problems around the clock. And in fact, China is, in my view, at the government level, is in some respects very far ahead of the United States. Look, they set up the People's Bank of China, the Central Bank of China set up in, I think it was in 2014. They set up a blockchain research institute, right? They have lots of engineers who understand what, with putting aside what they've said about crypto and mining, et cetera, they have really sophisticated engineers who understand the power of blockchain technology. In fact, in 2019, President Xi said that. He said, we have to be ahead of this game when it comes to blockchain. And they've even said that they would think about, or a former head of the digital yuan project said that he thought that they could integrate the digital yuan with Ethereum. What we have to think, but when China does this, they're going to do it in a very different way that's consistent with their values, right? They're much more of a surveillance state than we are. In my view, what we have to think about is how we can do what the United States always does best, right? Which is to incentivize our private sector to build out those solutions. And I think that we really have. There's so many of those that are underway in the United States, and we have to incentivize those projects, not deter them. If we don't incentivize them, then we're sort of losing what we do best, what we've always done best as a country, which is to unleash the incredible entrepreneurial spirit of the United States. Otherwise, we are. I believe this is the most urgent national security issue of our time. I believe that if we don't do that, if we stop being afraid of the technology and we embrace it, and then we think about how we can do those things that Stuart mentioned, right, which is go after illicit activity while bringing more people into the ecosystem, then I think we're going to fall perilously behind. That is my biggest fear. And again, I'm just a believer in the transformational nature of this technology because I now spend a lot of my time talking to these engineers. Brad is, one of the founder of a company like that. I just spend a lot of my time talking to these folks, and I think that they believe in financial freedom in a way that's extraordinarily exciting.
I'll just echo, I think it's very clear that China has been extremely strategic on this point. As Sigal already pointed out, they started years and years ago. The U.S. is very late to this party, and the U.S.'s engagement, as we've heard, is not so far in supporting the United States. The Internet of Information, as we know it today, in part thrived because there was that regulatory clarity in the late 90s. And we're doing the opposite here. Here's a massive new industry that I believe without question will underpin the future of our financial systems, not just around payments where Ripple primarily works today, but more broadly than that. And if the US doesn't get ahead of this, if we don't have that clarity and that certainty, and again, I thought in my judgment, when you're dealing with an alcoholic who doesn't want to admit they have an alcohol problem, to say that we have certainty, we have clarity is like the alcoholic saying, I don't have a problem. This is the elephant in the room. And I think, what you've heard from Sigal, I think very eloquently, if we don't address this, we're going to fall further behind.
Look, here's the problem, right? I'm somebody who spent a lot of my career in the government and now I'm on the other side. The problem is that I actually think there are terrific people in these agencies who want to provide clarity, right? The problem is that when you go into one of these offices, it's often the case that you then embark on an 18-month to 2-year process of trying to get clarity. And at the end of the day, you often don't get it at all. Look at CFIUS, right? With CFIUS, there's an obligation on the part of the United States to give an answer within 30 days. And then that time frame can be extended. If we truly want to incentivize this kind of innovation, and as already been said, people are dying for clarity. If we want to incentivize it, let's put a little bit of the burden on the government side, right, to actually provide those kinds of answers. Because the fact of the matter is, they're not out there. I do want to actually say that when I was at Treasury, Vincent was one of my agencies, and we tried to push out as much clarity as we can, and did that in the 2019 memo. But there's a lot more that can be done, and we have to hold our officials accountable for giving that kind of clarity. Again, from a national security perspective, I think it's a real imperative.
Let me ask you, from the perspective of the industry, and this is something I think is really interesting. Look, when Bitcoin began, it was one of the key words around it, and still to this day, was decentralized. The idea was that you could have a decentralized currency that is not under the control of any agency, any one group of people, any government, any banking cartel. And for its history, you have had this friction, and I think this is becoming a bigger and bigger issue. You have this friction between decentralized and centralized systems. How much appetite is there in the industry really to work with a government, to work with the United States government? How much pushback is there going to be? And that leads to questions of privacy, which I want to get to next. But, can this industry really work with an institution like the United States government?
So I think that the answer to that is definitely yes, and that there's a lot of the industry is filled with a lot of responsible people who do want to take effective action on these national security threats and who are willing to work with the government. There's no doubt about it. Look, Paul, you're probably right. There's probably a certain element that ideologically would be against that, but the United States government has the power, first of all, to say we're going to set rules here, and the industry will react. This is a responsible industry, and willing to work hard on some of these questions. I think the government has been a little bit scared to sort of set that clarity and to start that dialogue. But I think the industry has a responsibility on its side, as I alluded to earlier, to sort of be cognizant of some of the things that make the government somewhat concerned here. I mean, you mentioned decentralized. That the thing that this allows is it allows people to move money in great quantities around the world instantly, without necessarily revealing their identity. There are ways around that, and that poses a risk on the illicit finance national securities front. But those are problems that can be solved, I believe, by setting clear rules and challenging the industry to live up to them. I agree with what Brad and Sigal have said, that we've been kind of sitting back and waiting and hoping the problem will go away, while you see China rushing ahead and building another system which has features that I don't think that we want to live with in terms of surveillance and lack of privacy, but which is delivering very low cost, very efficient payments to a lot of people. So they are competing successfully with us if we don't step in and step up our game.
Yeah,
look, let me ask another question. If you had to put a timeline on how much time we have to get this right, and I think part of this is, especially for anyone who's in the United States watching this, you probably think you have a very modern payment system. But if you go to Europe or Asia, or I should say when Europeans and Asians look at our payment system, they think we're driving, we've got horse carry buggies. How much time do we have to really modernize our payment system, our financial system, before what's going on overseas just becomes the standard and we lose this?
We don't have any time. We're behind, in my view, right? It's not that we're not the dollar isn't the reserve currency, and that we don't have a very sophisticated banking, but there are other countries from a tech perspective, I think, that have the capacity to move well ahead of us. Paul, I just wanted to address one question that you said before, which is, will the industry work with the government? It's happening, right? There's a reason why the amount of illicit finance that actually happens in crypto has massively gone down over the last few years. I mean, by some estimates, it's well below 1%. There's a reason why, when you have attacks like the Twitter hack or Colonial Pipeline, there's a reason why they were able to catch those guys and disrupt it. That's because there's a huge amount of effort from industry to help to work with the government to solve these problems, right? I'm an advisor to a company called Chainalysis, which is one of the premier blockchain analytic firm. They do incredible work both with the private sector and the public sector, driving illicit activity down. I think it's also a little bit of a misnomer. It's great clickbait to say that crypto is just about illicit activity. It's just not the truth. I mean,
right, we've come a long way from the days of Silk Road, and I think to discount the real use cases because of actions of a few, which Again, some of this technology may have been born of an anti-government and anti-bank and all those kind of things. That's not where we are today. And Paul, to your question around, where is the U.S. today in its financial infrastructure? One thing that I think this audience will find interesting is since the SEC filed their lawsuits to get Ripple, we have signed dozens of new contracts with banks and payment providers around the world, and I think only one here in the United States. The lawsuit effectively has stymied the United States customers. Like, well, if the SEC is doing this, and some of these are public companies, like, we're not going to touch this until there's resolution. That just puts us further behind.
I want to talk about, and you guys sort of started to allude to this, so I want to kind of bring this out now. One of the big elements with these networks, excuse me, when you think about it, is that they produce an incredible amount of data. And what happens to that data is going to be extremely important in the years to come. And I said at the top of this that you could think of this as programmable money, and you can. And you can program these monetary systems to do a lot with that data. Could be very good things, could be very bad things. How do you ensure that these systems don't end up becoming very dystopian, very invasive, and that, privacy, which has become almost an afterthought in our modern world, doesn't just get shredded by these systems?
Yeah, is it a surprise China is leaning in the most aggressive, as they've all pointed out? Sorry, Stuart, go ahead.
Right, exactly. No, well, I was going to make the same point, Brad. Like, what's the worst outcome? The worst outcome is a payment system that catches on globally, that is run by China, which clearly is not going to have the same privacy concerns that we do. It's much better for us to set these sorts of standards, to set sorts of rules around how privacy should be protected. The United States can do it, Europe can do it, the Western world can do it. To have that balance, I think we do have a basic social contract that I think has served us well in the financial system, which is that you have some expectation of some privacy in your financial transactions, but that the government, if it has a legitimate, sufficient basis to do so, can inquire and find out who the real transactor is. That sort of balance could be adapted to this technology as well, and that's where we want to land, I would think, as a society or as a set of Western societies. But if we don't start to create that quickly, the default could very easily be a system which has exactly those dystopian features that you mentioned, Paul. I really believe that.
Yeah. I think that, Paul, also is where you set out those, incredibly sophisticated computer coders and engineers. There are companies that we talk about that are really talking about how do you transform the technology in exactly the way that Stuart and was just discussing, where you embed privacy, but you also enable it to actually potentially go after illicit activity in a much more sophisticated way, while getting the balance that we've gotten wrong so far, which is to bring more people into that ecosystem.
And again, to get back to the centralization, decentralization friction, some people will answer that the only way to ensure privacy is to create a system where that looks like Bitcoin. And look, understanding that there will be some people that will never believe what anybody from a incorporated company or from a government agency says. How can you assure people that their privacy will not be violated, given how many tech companies have been found of dipping into their users' data, given government overreach, which seems to be just they have a never-ending appetite for data. I mean,
are you sleeping?
Understanding that you can't satisfy everybody, but how can you assure people that you are responsible players that are going to protect your customers' privacy?
Look, I think we need to, I don't have a better answer than to say the type of, we need types of oversight and checks and balances and a free press that inquires on these things. We need to set rules and then expect people to live up to them, and when people don't live up to them, to hold them accountable. That sounds very basic, but that's the way, I think our society operates, and I think we have to do our best in that framework to do that. If the only answer is I want to be absolutely guaranteed that nothing will ever go wrong, then you're going to have a difficulty designing a system.
I think I'll just throw out here, I think this is what Sigal and Stuart just said is, core frameworks like AML, KYC, those don't have to go away in a world of crypto or blockchain enabled payment infrastructure. In fact, for Ripple, we only work with regulated endpoints. We only work with you can't have a Ripple enabled transaction that circumvents KYC or circumvents AML monitoring. And so I believe that the core framework around how we regulate our financial institutions globally, and you're in Brazil, you have a capital flow control. Well, that's enforced at the endpoint. The infrastructure pieces that can be massively more efficient in terms of speed and cost don't have to change how regulations are applied at endpoints.
Okay. So look, we have about 5 minutes left. I am going to try to get in some of these questions that I see popping up in the Q&A. How about the first one to Brad from Satish? With so much, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but this is the again. With so much at stake, why isn't Ripple moving out of the U.S. to the UK or Japan or Singapore?
Look, I mean, to some degree, the answer is we are. If you look at our hiring, we are hiring more people outside the United States. We have a major presence in both Singapore and in London already. And as we continue to invest and prioritize hiring, we're hiring more outside the United States for these reasons. When we onboard a customer to one of our core products that uses XRP is called on-demand liquidity. When we onboard a customer, we onboard them to a non-US company. But look, ultimately, being a company based here in the United States, I want to see the United States thrive in this area. I want to work with the US government to provide the clarity, to provide the certainty. But I again, as you've heard, trying to just provide that clarity through enforcement actions is not, I think, the right answer. So the answer to the question is we are. Should we fully give up on the United States? I'm not willing to go there yet.
Okay.
But we're constantly perilously on the edge of. I mean, I'm not going to talk for Ripple of doing the wrong thing. I just want to add. I mean, even today, there's a bill that's being debated on the Hill, which if it doesn't use the right language, could result in a lot of in the infrastructure bill, which could end up in a lot of core technologists being driven out of the United States. So this is an area where we got to act swiftly, but we also have to act very, very smartly. And if we don't, if we continue to repeat some of the mistakes of the past, then whether it's Ripple or not, lots of companies are just going to be driven out of the United States, or alternatively, they're going to do everything they can to just avoid the United States because they don't know what to do here.
Okay. On that, this is a pretty good follow-up question actually from Helen. Which countries do the panelists think are leading this conversation and seem to be creating a potential model that could be followed globally?
I'll highlight 4 real quickly, maybe 5. I mean, clearly the UK with their Token Taxonomy Act early on, while I think the US was kind of, hey, we're going to do through enforcement, they were proactive, engaged, and I think thoughtfully, how do we structure with Token Taxonomy Act. Japan, Singapore, Switzerland, even the UAE are 5 countries I'd put leading the pack.
Okay. Anybody else want to?
Well, just don't forget that China is far ahead of us. They're going to do this in a fundamentally different way, okay? Yeah. Without a doubt, that's consistent with their values. But in terms of countries who understand the technology, we got to remember every time you have especially at Aspen, you have to remember that they understand it, and I think in a very sophisticated way, and they're developing all kinds of technology to further it. In the direction that they want it to go. If we want to be at the center of that, we have to have those centers about excellence in the United States, whether it's by really having people who really understand things like decentralized finance, what it does, what can it do, how can it promote freedom or prosperity, or all of the other different, wide variety of technologies that are super interesting and exciting and can operate consistent with things like investor protection, anti-money laundering, if you give them the tools to follow the right set of rules.
And by the way, Paul, these things are just.
No, go ahead, Stuart. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that there are also international standards being set in these areas where, China is part of the conversation, of course, and other countries are part of the conversation. Those are areas where traditionally the United States has had the most persuasive and influential voice. This is an area where the United States needs to lead there as well, and set those standards, because the outcomes that we want are going to be different from the outcomes that China wants.
Okay. And you know what? With that, we are just about out of time, and I don't want to go over. So I am going to turn it back over to our handlers at the Aspen Institute. I want to thank everyone for coming in this morning, for joining. At least it's the morning where I am. I hope it's the morning where you are.
Yeah, so interesting stuff there coming from Brad for sure. Some great questions, I'm sure, coming from the XRP community. At least two of those, I believe. So really, really good stuff, guys. There, GDLT, what's going on? Tay Marquise, it's great to see you. I wanted to hop on here, just share some stuff. Thanks again to Mr. BXRP for sharing, taking his time and energy and resources to share with the community. We appreciate that, my friend. So guys, listen, be sure to go to Mr. BXRP channel if you want to listen to that again. Understand that we are early adopters in this new asset class that is a digital asset space. And the powers that be understand that we got here first. I believe, just like Dan Robb was saying, we got here first. And understand that in this market, Wall Street we are the retail speculators, and we are the liquidity for Wall Street. There are powers that be that understand that if decentralized things like decentralized finance work, then there's less liquidity, right? For them, right? Because we can participate on our own and make our own decisions and choose our own money. Just understand that, right? And so this is a fight. And you may not be able to see who the enemy is, but this is a fight, because this, just like Segal constantly kept saying, this is about financial freedom and prosperity for the masses. Unlike ever before, ever in the history of the planet, this is what this new technology represents and can bring to each and every one of us. So understand that's a big time fight, because decades and decades and decades ago, there was a decision by two I believe it might have been Rockefeller and JP Morgan, years and years and years and years ago, when they decided that they didn't want educated financial people thought for themselves. What they wanted in the education system were workers. That's what they wanted. They wanted workers. And this decentralized finance flips that script, allows you and I to choose our own money, make our own decisions, and learn how to become financially independent and prosperous without the powers that be. So we got to understand that that's where the fight is. And so that's why I always ask, are you participating? Are you participating? Because the idea of just buying an asset and holding on to it will not be enough to win. It will not be enough to win this fight, to win this war. Active participation, actively participating in governance, actively letting your vote and your voice be heard is how we win. That's how we win. We can't keep our head in the sands. This is not 2017. We're evolving. We have to, if we want to win this, we got to participate. We got to show that we believe in things like decentralized finance and things like play to earn, where in emerging countries, people can create financial independence for themselves by merely playing a game. Never has that happened, ever. And we need a new 1%. Trust me when I tell you that. All right, guys, listen, I'm going to end this video like I do all of my videos and remind you guys of this. Old money doesn't want you to win. But that's okay, though, because you and I are already winning. Have a great rest of your day, guys. I'll talk to you soon. See ya. Bye.